S&P 500 futures up 76 points. So the S&P, we advanced 2.5%. Laura, just to wrap this conversation up, so many economists come on this programs like this, and say, don't extrapolate out this improvement too far, too quickly, because you might be disappointed in the months to come. My question at the moment, Lara, would be, okay, the initial bounce out of the shutdown, we seem to be having real trouble understanding just how big that bounce is right now. At what point do you expect the bounce to fade? When do we know that these warnings not to extrapolate out the improvement that we're seeing right now are actually true and hold something? Is it August, September? When's the bite point for you?
I think it's July, and I could just be speaking as the vantage of a parent, but if we find out if schools are reopening or not, it's going to have a big implication for both the virus, for how we're able to reengage with the economy, and how back to normal we can actually get.
Laura Rain of FS Investments. Lara, always great to catch up with you. Thanks for joining us on this huge upside surprise in the US economy, not just on the labour market from the payrolls report from a couple of weeks ago, which, let's be clear, claims still hasn't quite validated just yet. But US retail sales encouraging as well. Up by 76 points we are now, Tom, on the S&P 500. We advance a little bit more. That's a little bit more fuel now for the optimism as we bounce out of the shutdown.
Now, buttressed up against NASDAQ 100, 10,000, and of course the Dow nowhere near the record highs of 29,000, but nevertheless, John, really pushing aside such the gloom we saw late last week. It's been remarkable, John. The 5-day span is what? We've moved 10,000 Dow points, 20,000 Dow points in a matter of 5 days.
I don't count the Dow points like you do, but I take your point, Tom, on the equity market more broadly. Lisa, it's almost like Chinese water torture. Drip, drip, drip of good news, just converting the bears slowly. And Bank of America, with the fund manager survey out this morning, Lisa, I know you looked at the same thing, really saying that the pain trade still is this equity market to drift higher.
Well, I thought it was interesting that the cash allocation dropped to 4.7% from 5.7% in that cash allocation survey. That was the biggest decline since 2009. We know what 2009 was like. There is a question, again, John, whether the Fed will come through and backstop all potential hiccups here, in addition to the data getting better. Is that what we're pricing in at this point?
Well, this market's getting better. We advanced by 78 points, up by almost 2.6% on the S&P 500. That data point behind us, it's looking good. It's breathing more life into this equity market ahead of the opening bell. A little bit later this morning, 10 a.m. Eastern time, 1 hour and 19 minutes away, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jay Powell, in front of the Senate Banking Committee, day one of 2 days of testimony on Capitol Hill, with full coverage coming up on Bloomberg TV and Bloomberg Radio. Alongside Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Ferro, together with Lisa Abramowitz, with your equity market pushing ever higher. This is Bloomberg.
Now let's see what else is going on around the world. Here with the latest headlines is Amy Morris. Good morning, Amy.
And good morning, Tom. The Trump administration is preparing its latest proposal to get the economy going. Bloomberg's learned the plan calls for spending almost $1 trillion on infrastructure. Most of that money would be set aside for traditional projects like roads and bridges, but it would also spend on 5G networks and rural broadband. There are more concerns about a potential new wave of the coronavirus in the U.S., even as the increase in U.S. infections fell below the 1-week average. Cases in Arizona and Florida are on the rise, and hospitalizations in Texas are at record levels. Meanwhile, in China, the government is ramping up testing to determine whether a new outbreak in Beijing warrants another strict lockdown. New York, meanwhile, is opening slowly in phases, but the damage there is done. ER physician Dr. Suzanne Bentley says the pandemic has already taken a toll on her colleagues who suffer from sleepless nights or nightmares and heightened anxiety.
We plan and we think about, and we knew COVID was coming. And in my wildest dreams, I never imagined how devastating and hard it would be.
Local leaders say they'll continue with reopening efforts, careful not to open too early to avoid any other spike in infections. North Korea blew up an inter-Korean liaison office building just north of the heavily armed border with South Korea. It was a carefully choreographed display of anger that sharply increases tensions on the Korean peninsula, putting pressure on Washington and Seoul amid deadlocked nuclear diplomacy. The demolition of that building is symbolic for the most part, but it's still the most provocative thing that North Korea has done in 2 years. Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Global News 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. Much more still to come. This is Bloomberg.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini. The bidding wars are back. Redfin says nearly half of potential buyers in May faced competition from others competing to purchase the same home. Boston had one of the worst pandemic outbreaks in the nation in the spring, and that's where buyers faced the most competition, with more than 64% of would-be home buyers dealing with the fact that someone else was bidding on the same property. Redfin agents say they're seeing a frenzy on any home priced below $500,000 in the Boston metro. Bidding war is also very common in Dallas, Washington, D.C., Salt Lake City, Denver, San Francisco, San Jose, Seattle, Austin, Minneapolis, Los Angeles, and Portland. Seattle area agents say any home between $300,000 and $500,000 ends up in a bidding war, with many homes going for above the appraised value. Redfin says overall, single-family homes were way more likely to attract the most interest from buyers, but bidding wars were least common in Miami, and they fell dramatically in Las Vegas. And that's your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
For the friendships, for the fresh air, for the space to grow, for the knowledge, for the sport, for the outdoor education, for the wide horizons, for the academic excellence, for the future. Unleash your child's education at West Buckland School, a co-educational day and boarding school in beautiful North Devon. If you're moving to the southwest for a better quality of life, this is education without compromise, in what the Good Schools Guide called a gem of a school in an exceptional location. To see for yourself, find us at westbuckland.com.
If you want to find out what the best laptop is for streaming all your favourite box sets back to back while sitting in your garden, you could ask an algorithm, or someone called Al, or Sue, or Sanjay, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience.
Hi, you're talking to Ali on Shop Live.
Isn't it nice to get advice from another human being? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
Given the current policy environment, you're going to have a pretty big decline in real disposable income in the third quarter. And the reason is you packed so much of that stimulus into the second quarter.
Mike Ferroli of JP Morgan on the storm clouds still ahead of us in 2020. Right now, the focus on the better data we got 20 minutes ago. Once again, a huge upside surprise for this U.S. economy. It comes from retail sales data, much better than expected. From New York City this morning, good morning to all. Alongside Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Ferro, together with Lisa Abramowitz, with equity futures up 2.6% on the S&P 500, up 80 points going into the opening bell. Tom, I'll be running off to TV to count you down to the opening bell and get up to speed with Michelle Meyer of Bank of America on this big turnaround in this economy as we reopen.
It'll be interesting to see Michelle Meyer, of course, always wonderful on the American consumer and some of the distinctions, the nuances. I'm sure that she will glean from the report. Right now, folks, we want to go retail. And as we spoke to Steve Sadoff yesterday on Bloomberg Surveillance, we now speak with Gerald Storch. To be direct, he has a wonderful pedigree of trying to drive forward retail and how we consume, not only at Target, at Toys R Us, but of course his work at Hudson Bays as well with Storch Advisors this morning. Wonderful to have you here, Gerald. Give me an update on how retail's doing against Amazon. We just saw great retail news, but was it really just great digital news, great Amazon news?
Great question. And what we're seeing is Amazon's definitely continue to thrive. One of the most, amazing numbers from the report this morning was that internet sales were up 31% year over year. And they were up 9% versus last month, which is already way up. So there's no doubt that Amazon and the e-commerce is gaining share dramatically. Having said that, there's some bricks and mortar that are doing just fine. Another great number in this report was building materials, which is Lowe's and Home Depot. Those guys were up a whopping 16% year over year and 10% versus the prior month. So they're doing fantastic. I think Walmart and Target and Costco are doing great too. They don't really break that out separately, but when you look at general merchandise year over year, it was flat. They were up 6% versus the prior year, but that includes department stores, which aren't doing nearly as well. They're the ones really getting annihilated here. And so even though people say, oh, they were up versus last month, they better be. All of them were closed last month. They were down still 26% year over year in department stores. Apparel is also terrible, down 60% year over year. So the prior trends remain. They're just accelerated and exacerbated by the situation.
So, Jerry, let's talk about some of the pain that we're seeing in the department store space. In particular, we saw that Authentic Brands is teaming up with Simon Property and Brookfield to possibly buy JCPenney. The idea being that these mall operators are saying, hey, our biggest tenant's going bankrupt. We need to at least preserve that space and preserve that store. What is the calculation here? How much more staying power does the traditional brick and mortar department store have going forward?
Well, there's no doubt that they're getting absolutely hammered. They have been for a long time. It's not going to get better. There's nothing here that will change things. The consumer has shifted their purchasing habits permanently away from the mall and away from department stores towards the big box retailers and towards the internet. But not only that, even worse for department stores, they've shifted their habits away from apparel and towards more hard lines and other forms of spending. So what we're seeing is not just department stores, apparel stores getting killed in the mall as well. But the mall owners really have no choice. If they let some of these big anchors go out, then they're going to be stuck because of co-tenancy clauses with a significant reduction in the rents that they receive from the other tenants. There'll be massive renegotiations taking place in all of these malls. So they have to save some of these guys. So what you see, the smarter developers, and Simon is certainly the best of the best, the creme de la creme. They're being very thoughtful at who they invest in, who they support. You saw them supporting Forever 21, another important retailer. They will look, pick and choose, see who they're going to try to keep in business so the whole malls don't go dark, which you are seeing certainly around the country in many cases. We have 2 to 3 times the retail square footage in the U.S. that we need. Something is going to change here.
Well, Jerry, and this is something, as you said, this has been a trend in place for a long time. The pandemic just accelerated it, but I'm trying to understand what this is going to look like going forward. Some of these stores, a lot of them are going to have to close. You do have malls trying to preserve their tenants. That only goes so far if people are shopping online. What do you see? Is it going to be more fulfillment centers within the malls? Is it going to be more experiences, even though there is some hesitance at this point, given the pandemic?
A couple of things. First of all, keep in mind one point I made. It's not just the internet that's killing these malls. It's also the big box retailers, the big discounters. Companies like Walmart and Target and Costco are doing fine, thank you. Dollar stores, by the way, are doing fine. Dollar Generals are these folks are doing great too. So it's not just that it's all moving to the internet. There's multiple pressures on the malls and department stores that have been there for quite some time. So many of these malls are simply going to have to close. Others will remain open, but with reduced rents. Others are going to be redeveloped into more multi-use communities with more residential in the same place, more commercial real estate buying the same space. Because if they're well located, real estate's still real estate. They're not making any more of it, and it's still going to be quite valuable. Some of the malls that are in terrible places, they're going to have to go. Some of the malls that have gone too far the other way, trying to be the experience where you want to spend the whole day, have lots of fun, go on on an amusement ride, that kind of thing. I think they've gone too far given today's focus. People don't want to go out and just kind of hang out in an indoor space, for gosh sakes, and, sort of wander around. They're destination shoppers now.
We've got to get you back. Chair Storch, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate the enthusiasm as we analyze so much about retail. If you're just joining us on our simulcast, all you need to know is, once again, like that jobs report of a number of weeks ago, retail stuns with a huge snapback. I mean, Lisa, that's all that it is. It was just a huge snapback, wasn't it?
Well, 17.7% gain versus the expectation of a little more than 8%. And it just raises a question of why economists are underballing or lowballing the recovery. We still are seeing a pretty massive jobless rate. There still is a lot of pressure on the economy. But I have to go back to something that Laura Rame talked about earlier, which is the stimulus that we have gotten from the federal government has given people more spending power than perhaps a lot of economists accounted for. And the question is, going to John's point, is how long does this last? When can we expect this initial V to fade, or is this going to be what is going to be? And are we going to see something closer to a V-shaped recovery?
And some of that, Lisa, may be a gross underestimation of the bottom two deciles of the income pile getting a lot of that support from the government. I need to support you with a data check right now. We do that with the VIX in two big figures. It is in 12 points. 12 points in the last 22 hours, I'll say maybe 21 hours. We've gone from 44 to 32 on the VIX. Again, at the highs of the other day, we were under a 30, so we're not quite there yet. We do okay in the equities. SPX up 87 points, 2.9%, 3149. Dow futures dazzle up 927 points. Lisa and I are going to keep going here until we're up 1,000 points, 26,600 up on the Dow, 3.6% as well. And of course, we've got in the yield space, Treasury up 5 points. The chairman of the Federal Reserve somehow will have something good to say about retail. We'll look for that at the 10 a.m. hour. Please stay with us for more good conversation. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Good morning.
If you have to drive, then it's more important than ever to watch your speed. As London starts to reopen, there are going to be more people on our streets. There'll be more people cycling, more people walking to work or to the shops. If you must drive, avoid the morning and evening peaks when the roads will be busier. We want the streets to be safe for everyone, all the time. So watch your speed. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to
get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
Hairbands to kids.
Desks for home offices.
Delivering the goods.
Shipping footballs. Fruit trees.
And dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
At Asda, we're helping you shop safely by keeping our stores clean and limiting customer numbers so you can keep 2 meters apart. With our Scan and Go mobile app, you can reduce contact at the till too. Asda, we're all in this together. Subject to availability, mobile data charges may apply.
To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Cover coughs and sneezes with a tissue. Then throw the tissue away. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth with unwashed hands. Disinfect surfaces, bottles, handles, knobs, and other places touched often. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn. How do hockey fans know what day it is? Just turn on the Locked on NHL podcast, where a rotating cast of hockey experts guide you through the week with a different theme show for every day. From big news Monday to recap Friday.
But we've got a couple of news items that are noteworthy in the NHL in the last week, one of which is below the NHL, and we'll bring that up first. So the AHL announced officially, this has been speculated for weeks and weeks, but the AHL...
Search Locked on NHL on TuneIn to listen.
30 for 30 is up to bat again with Long Gone Summer, the new documentary chronicling Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa's legendary race to topple the single-season home run record in 1998. Go behind the scenes with TuneIn's Long Gone Summer channel, featuring podcasts like Jalen and Jacoby, The After Show, where they discuss the film with director A.J. Schnock. Plus, keep the nostalgia going with classic game replays from Cubs and Cardinals history. Search Long Gone Summer to listen.
Are you fully informed on the NBA? On the NBA Hangtime podcast, veteran sports writers Sekou Smith and John Schumann analyze the latest NBA news, storylines, and discussions with guests from around the basketball universe.
Isaiah Thomas joined us here on the Hangtime podcast. Isaiah, good morning.
Everybody's doing well. As you know, my daughter tested positive.
Search NBA Hangtime on TuneIn to listen.
Stay close to College Hoops Conversation with College Basketball Talk podcast from NBC Sports.